10.3 are due.
They're not, none of this work for this unit is actually due until the test.
Oh, wow. So that's a long time.
No, I'd rather you get it done. So yeah, you need to hang on to it. And you just need, you know, this stuff is introductory to everything else that you're going to learn. So you need to get it done now so that you can learn as you go through.
That's
Okay.
March 4th. All this is very
Okay. So yeah, lots of, and I do it that way so that you guys can work at your own pace, so to speak. I still recommend that you, one, because you're going to want to know how stuff works so that you can learn the drugs and understand what it's talking about when you're picking up the classes and stuff.
like that. We're in a home stretch, guys.
Okay. Calculations is a pretty long chapter. It's not that hard. It's a lot of work, but it's. I mean, it has its moments, but anyway. So we'll talk about 10.1 and 10.3 today, or get through as much as we can. I will record 10.2 for tomorrow, and tomorrow I'll go over the therapeutic classes of the drugs. And so if you'll look, I gave you a couple of things. Wait, can I give you a PowerPoint yet?
No, but for some reason I already had PowerPoint. Safety and pharmacy?
No. We went over that last. Okay, so anyways, look in here real quick, and I'll kind of tell you what your quiz will be over. I'll go over the therapeutic classes tomorrow. But drugs are organized into, we call them therapeutic classes because they're organized as to how they work. And that's what dictates what class they're in, is how they function in the body. So generally speaking, most classes of drugs have the same purpose. Now there's some that mix, like depression and anxiety. Sometimes those are kind of, interchangeable. Not that the diagnosis is, but those drugs are. Or they can work on both, but a lot of them have the same type of effect. So once you learn about a class of drugs, a lot of times, a lot of the side effects might be the same, the purpose is going to be the same, and their generic name will sound similar. It'll have a suffix that's associated with it. Not always, and there's always exceptions to everything, just like there is to everything else. But anyway, so if you'll look on page 2 of this PowerPoint, and again, I'll go over this actually in the lecture tomorrow, where it says therapeutic classes. All of these are the ones that you'll need to know for a quiz next week. So there will be a quiz next week over the therapeutic classes, and it's just the ones listed in the PowerPoint. Okay, you might write that down because I also gave you another page that has drug classes on it. And these, I just gave you this to keep as notes, so you'll have it because there's some different ones on here. And sometimes they're called kind of different things or whatever, but so I gave you that to put in your notes, the drug class definitions, but the ones you need to know for your quiz are in the PowerPoint. Okay. I think there are there are 10 of them, so but that's where you'll get there in here. Okay, that'll be next week. I think it's listed on your calendar for Thursday, a week from today. Those 10 classes, and it's matching over the therapeutic classes. The 10 classes that are in the PowerPoint. That'll be Thursday. See where it says therapeutic classes quiz next Thursday on your calendar? I'm sorry. That's what it's talking about, is those 10 classes that are in this PowerPoint. Okay. Now, in the meds, I'm going to give you guys, we'll have some other like supplemental work as we go in this unit because obviously, even though you've got like 10 units online, y'all know it doesn't take you very long to get through those sections. So that's not going to fill up 4 weeks of time. You probably get them all done in a day. So you'll have some other supplemental material as we go through. So anyways, let's get started. So chapter 10 and this HS, remember, is this blue book. So that's where this work will come out. Okay, so places where we get drugs, sources of drugs, and this is something I think we mentioned in the beginning. So there's natural drugs like plants or animals, like we get some of the insulin that people get is actually animal insulin, like pig insulin. Hold on.
Bingo.
There it is.
But people wonder what you do when they're in the other class or the online classes.
Well, they can see what I do.
I mean, like outside of classes.
So anyways,
Wonder about it.
plants, I mean, you guys know, there's all kinds of herbs and supplements people take that are natural, but also there's some things that directly come from plants or animals that we use. Microscopic organisms like bacteria or molds and fungus, some things like penicillin. Remember Fleming, what was it, like 28, I think, 1928, discovered penicillin from like bread mold. So that's where it originally came from. And then synthetics or bioengineering, so actually making the drug. Okay, make synthetic just means that it's being made. It doesn't come from a natural source. So plants, like I said, is the main source until the early 1900s. So issues with it, some are not absorbed very well. Makes sense. Some are broken down so fast that they don't last long enough, or your body doesn't even have time to actually use them. Obviously, slow and expensive. Just trying to figure out how it works. It's just like we talked about. I think last year we were talking about like the opium poppy. People would take that for pain or whatever other reasons, and but who knows how much they were getting? And they just take a leaf and mix it in their drink or something. Who knows? And it's a dangerous thing to mess with. Could contain impurities, and then some are just extremely scarce. So poppies, again, codeine and morphine, like the opium poppy. Foxglove is originally where digitalis came from, and digitalis, or the other term for that is digoxin. It's a cardiac med. And we'll talk about that. That one's a very frequently prescribed medication. Cancer treatments. I guess you say that I don't know. Thyroid gland, so thyroid hormone replacement. Digestive enzymes, pig insulin again. So other areas where we get natural drug sources. Penicillin, like we said, drugs used to fight infection are made from microorganisms. Did y'all know that you have on your body, you have what's called your normal flora, which is just your normal everyday bacteria that lives on your skin. And in your mucous membranes, you have your normal flora. It's bacteria that is supposed to be in your body. It's good bacteria that eats bad bacteria. Takes care of it. Isn't that nasty? So synthetics and bioengineering chemistry, it's just the actually making the drug. May not need to be taken as often as natural ones. They can make them last longer. You might take one a day instead of one every few hours or whatever. Okay, pharmacotherapeutics. What words do you see in there? Pharmacy and
Therapeutic.
What's therapeutic mean?
Yes, it's like a way of
Helping.
Yeah, it's therapy. Think of the word therapy. It's treatment. It's whatever you're doing to make them better. Okay? So pharmacotherapeutics is the study of basically what makes the drug do what it's supposed to do. So examines MOA is mechanism of action. So where does it work as far as like the cellular level? How does it work? Mechanism of action. Describes the effects produced by a drug. This also determines what dose of a drug is needed to produce a certain effect. So they're trying to figure out, how much do we actually need to make it work. We talked about trials and stuff last week. And then pharmacotherapeutics then determines what dose of a drug produces toxic effects, so how much is too much. I wouldn't want to be on the end of that research, but that's what they look at. Okay, mechanism of action. Typically, if two drugs have the same, or drugs have the same mechanism of action, they work in the same way. That's what makes them in the same therapeutic class. And all drugs in a therapeutic class produce their effects in the same way, but are made from different chemicals. So you have drugs like atenolol was one that was on the quiz we saw earlier. So it's a cardiac med. Usually makes your blood pressure go down. Sometimes it also makes the heart go down. Well, metoprolol is one, and atenolol. Those are two separate drugs made from different chemicals, but they work the same way. They have the same mechanism of action. They're both beta blockers. That's their class, and they sound alike. Atenolol, metoprolol. Okay. There's four basic mechanisms of action. They have like the lock and key principle. So the drug is the key, and then the chemical in the body is the lock. That's how they fit together to actually function and work. So these are the four ways that this can work. First of all, it says binding to and stimulating a receptor in the body. So the drug itself, whatever receptor is, like let's say it's a pain medicine. Okay, and these drugs lock into that receptor. That's a way that's one type of mechanism of action. Binding to and blocking a receptor. So one stimulates, one binds, depending on what they're going to do. Hopefully a pain would be one that would block. Okay. Inhibiting an enzyme. What do we know that enzymes do in the body? They what? They speed up chemical reactions, right? They work as catalysts. They make chemical reactions in the body work. They kind of fit like a key into just to make a chemical reaction work. Well, if we inhibit the enzyme, it's going to prevent those reactions from occurring. Okay, decreasing the movement of a chemical across a cell membrane. And we all should know what that means, right? Different chemicals cross into the cell for different reasons, whether we're talking about whatever it is. Electrolytes, nutrients, chemicals, whatever it is. Okay, so they can actually make it where they won't move into or out of the cell. Okay, so that's how drugs work at the cellular level. Those are examples of ways that drugs can work. Does that make sense? Let me just talk about this. So, I keep getting ahead of myself on the things here. So, binding to and stimulating a receptor in the body, it says the drug imitates the natural body key. So these are called agonists or mimetics, like it mimics, okay, what our body already does or already should do. Okay, so they act like they try to make processes work the way that they should. Binding to and blocking a receptor, so just like I said, these they'll bind into that receptor and they block it, they keep it from happening, like a pain medicine would. Okay? Or could do. They work different ways. But these are called antagonists. Does that make sense? It works against. Okay? Or blockers. So you'll hear that word, like beta blockers, like I talked about earlier. Okay? That's what that has to do with. Okay, inhibiting, trying to put those words together. Inhibiting an enzyme changes the effects of the enzyme by changing the enzyme concentration in the body. And that's one way that can work. And then decreasing the movement of a cell. Says drugs that work by inhibiting specific pumps in the plasma membrane. Okay, so different pumps, y'all know, we've talked about that before. Okay, so cell membrane has pumps, and these are going to work to function to make that, change that up, or to cause it whatever it needs to do.